Humanity is burdened by a profound, historically repetitive flaw. It is our blind, intoxicating belief that the complex technology we invent in the safety of our laboratories can bend the ruthless laws of nature to our will. We operate under the dangerous, arrogant illusion that our intellect and our machinery alone can somehow conquer the physical universe. We believe that a glowing radar screen, a perfectly balanced magnetic compass, or an elegant mathematical equation can insulate our fragile biology from the wrath of the unknown. Nowhere is this blinding arrogance more painfully visible than in the immediate aftermath of the Second World War. It was an era of unparalleled human triumph, a time when humanity believed it was running out of skies, oceans, and continents to conquer. We had split the atomic fabric of reality itself, charted the deepest oceanic trenches, and crisscrossed the skies with massive armadas of steel. But just off the coast of our civilized, industrialized world, there remained one final, untamed challenge. A vast, terrifying dark void, the waters of the Atlantic Ocean. For centuries, the open ocean had been a merciless, indifferent graveyard for human ambition. Heavy galleons, built with the finest timber and iron of their age, were effortlessly crushed to splinters by massive rogue waves. Seasoned explorers, armed with centuries of navigational knowledge, were swallowed by relentless hurricanes, drowning in the pitch-black abyss. The ocean was an impenetrable liquid fortress, silently defending its borders against the creeping expansion of mankind. But the United States Navy, fresh from a global victory, looked at this unpredictable expanse and formulated a completely different approach. Their plan was not born of a healthy respect for the dangerous waters. It was born of pure, elegant mechanical hubris. Why fear the unpredictability of the sea, they reasoned, when one could simply fly thousands of feet above it all? The military proposed a reality that seemed undeniably brilliant. They would soar over the deep, untouched by the wrath of nature, sealed inside armored warplanes. The date is December 5th, 1945. The location is Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale, Florida, a sprawling military hub situated on the edge of the vast Atlantic. Here, 14 men, a mix of battle-hardened veterans and inexperienced 19-year-old trainees, prepared for a routine navigational flight. Their designated vessels were not fragile wooden ships built to merely ride the unpredictable surface of the water. They were 5 massive, heavily armored TBM Avenger torpedo bombers, intimidating machines of pure military destruction. They were essentially flying tanks, thousands of pounds of solid steel and volatile aviation fuel, propelled by Wright Cyclone engines. They christened this heavy military formation Flight 19. But this expedition was flawed by the environment it was born into. It was entirely reliant on the illusion of absolute control. The cargo and equipment they carried perfectly illustrated the sheer depth of their mechanical arrogance. Instead of expecting the horror of the open water, these men flew as if they were conducting a casual afternoon drive. They packed no survival gear for a disaster. They trusted blindly in their gyroscopic compasses, long-wave radios, and mathematical flight paths. They were treating the hostile environment of the open sea as a mere predictable stage for their navigational training. The weather that afternoon was beautiful. It was a crystalline, windless winter day that disguised the ocean's unforgiving depth behind a mask of shimmering blue. Amidst the roar of their radial engines, Flight 19 majestically ascended into the crystal-clear sky of the upper atmosphere. But nature has no patience for mechanical arrogance, and the punishment it delivers is psychologically devastating. Unlike a sudden catastrophic explosion or a torn wing, the failure of Flight 19 did not announce itself with a loud noise. It began in absolute creeping silence, miles away from human civilization. Sometime around 3:45 p.m., the very mechanisms designed to steer and protect the massive bombers catastrophically and inexplicably failed. The magnetic compasses, the crucial tools for directional survival, untethered from the Earth's magnetic poles. Due to an unseen geographical anomaly, the physical needles beneath the glass began to spin in violent, maddening circles. The gyroscopic compasses, marvels of modern aviation designed as fail-safes, simply froze and died, their internal mechanics locked by an invisible force. In the blink of an eye, the mighty Flight 19 was stripped of its navigational senses. It instantly mutated from a squadron of scientific military might into 5 helpless drifting slaves to the atmospheric currents. The 14 men were now flying blind, suspended in glass cockpits, beneath tanks of aviation fuel. Beneath them lay thousands of miles of shifting, deadly, bottomless black water. They were at the mercy of an environment that possessed no concept of mercy or salvation. The flight of the lost squadron was a slow, agonizing descent into a psychological nightmare that few humans ever lived to describe. As the planes drifted deeper into the high-altitude void, a heavy pale green fog enveloped their glass canopies. They were suspended in a liminal void, oscillating wildly between the pale sky above and the black ocean below. The rhythmic roar of their own engines was the only sound left in an isolated universe. For hours, the trainees and their desperate commander did not know which way was north, south, east, or west. They watched, paralyzed by dread, as the damp green fog wrapped around their steel planes like a toxic burial shroud. Stripped of their direction, unable to see the sun, and dragged down by the psychological weight of the unknown, the squadron began a descent into madness. Panic, the ultimate destroyer of logic, finally shattered their fragile illusion of control. Through the heavily distorted static of the radio channel, the control tower heard the disjointed fragments of a broken commander. Lieutenant Charles Taylor, a respected veteran of the Pacific Theater, sounded detached from reality. "Both my compasses are out," he reported, his words echoing into the void like a death sentence. "We don't know which way is west. Everything is wrong." The control room operators sat in their towers, powerless to help the dying men in the sky. It was a futile mathematical equation. The planes were heavy, the aviation fuel was burning, nature was systematically pulling them down. The true psychological horror of the 1945 disappearance had now fully materialized. There were no concrete walls to lock them in, yet they were trapped in the ultimate prison. The paralyzing claustrophobia of the open air. The sky was an empty pale green void. The ground was an endless expanse of pitch black water waiting to swallow them whole. The horizon itself was indistinguishable, a visual wipeout that erased the boundaries of reality and human perception. They were 14 highly trained military men, suddenly forced to fight an invisible war against the oldest predator on Earth. Realizing that a physical rescue was a mathematical impossibility without exact coordinates, Taylor made an agonizing, fatalistic decision. He ordered his men to fly as a tight, cohesive group, wingtip to wingtip, until their fuel gauges ran dry so they would all go down together. Every single minute of that final doomed formation was an exercise in excruciating psychological agony. Cold sweat poured from their exhausted bodies, their eyes straining desperately against the foggy glass, searching the mist for any sign of land. But then, nature played its most cruel, sadistic visual joke on the desperate pilots. As they looked out of their windows, staring down at the water through the breaks in the fog, they realized the ocean itself was mutating beneath their wings. "We are entering white water," Taylor crackled over the radio, painting a terrifying picture of a sea boiling with unseen, abyssal forces. It was a geographical betrayal of the highest possible order. The very surface of the planet they were meant to dominate had turned into an unrecognizable, deeply hostile landscape. It was the ultimate, inescapable psychological torture. They were trapped on a massive aerial treadmill, flying in desperate circles, sweating in the freezing cockpit, burning their final drops of fuel, only to be effortlessly swallowed by the indifferent mist. The sheer crushing weight of this realization began to fracture their minds and strip away their mechanical confidence. The men who had meticulously planned their flight paths and trusted their flawless machinery were now starving for fuel. Their elegant technological supremacy was entirely gone. To survive, they were reduced to desperate animals hoping for a miracle that would never come. The final faint radio signals slowly dissolved into the cosmic background radiation, a slow, agonizing death of communication. Flight 19 simply ceased to exist within the physical universe, but the deep ocean shares the exact same ruthless appetite as the freezing Arctic ice. The abyss was not yet full. The tragic disaster of Flight 19 immediately triggered the second, deeply terrifying act of this nightmare. The United States Navy, refusing to accept that 5 massive warplanes could vanish without a trace, dispatched a massive rescue mission. They sent a colossal, heavily modified PBM Mariner flying boat directly into the heart of the storm. It was a search and rescue Leviathan carrying a deeply experienced crew of 13 men. Nicknamed the Flying Gas Station due to its highly flammable aviation fuel reserves, this giant aircraft was designed for extreme survival. They flew directly into the anomaly, armed with the finest radar and communication technology the military possessed at the time. They were confident that their superior machinery would effortlessly cut through the mystery and locate the missing squadron. But exactly 20 minutes after takeoff, high above the churning, unforgiving waters, physics completely broke down for a second time. Radar operators back on the mainland sat paralyzed in their dark rooms, watching the bright green blip of the massive Mariner pushing steadily across the glass screen. The sweeping line of the radar painted a deeply unsettling picture of absolute isolation, a single fragile spark of human life venturing into a dead zone. And then, as the operators watched in breathless horror, the glowing blip simply evaporated from the screen. There was no desperate mayday call echoing over the speakers. There was no static-filled sound of tearing metal over the frequency. Just the immediate crushing weight of total, unending silence. A colossal, heavily armored flying machine, entirely filled with highly flammable fuel, and 13 human souls were permanently erased from the canvas of reality. 27 healthy military men, 6 state-of-the-art military aircraft, gone in a matter of a few short, horrifying hours. The United States Navy, humiliated and terrified by this invisible enemy, unleashed an unprecedented armada to aggressively search the churning seas. The massive escort carrier USS Solomons, along with hundreds of destroyers, submarines, and low-flying aircraft, systematically flooded the region. They were determined to tear the ocean apart, wave by wave, until they forced nature to surrender their missing men. For days on end, fighting through deep physical exhaustion and a creeping dread, the search crews stared blindly into the black water. They meticulously gridded and searched over 200,000 square miles of the vast, indifferent Atlantic Ocean, scanning every crest. The sheer scale of the operation was staggering, a deafening testament to humanity's refusal to accept the brutal indifference of nature. They looked desperately, with straining eyes, heavy binoculars, and blinding naval floodlights for bright yellow life rafts. They searched the dark waves for shimmering oil slicks, floating seat cushions, or any tiny shred of physical evidence. They searched for absolutely anything that would rationally prove that the fundamental laws of physics still applied to them. But the ocean is an ancient, monolithic vault, and it does not surrender its deep secrets to those who simply demand them with ships and steel. Despite the greatest, most technologically advanced search effort in naval history, they found absolutely nothing. There was not a single drop of unburned aviation fuel floating on the water. There was not a shredded, twisted piece of aluminum fuselage. There was not a single trace of the 27 missing men. It was exactly as if Flight 19, the colossal PBM Mariner, and all the souls aboard had simply flown right off the edge of the Earth. The massive fleet eventually returned to port in complete, defeated silence, their mechanical pride broken, forever haunted by the vastness of the empty waters. This inexplicable void of evidence instantly sparked a deeply terrifying, enduring legend that would haunt human consciousness for decades. The birth of the Bermuda Triangle. The disappearance of these 27 men is not merely an unsolved aviation mystery or a tragic footnote in the ledgers of military history. It serves as a grim, profoundly humbling reminder that the physical universe cannot be tricked by our engineering, and it cannot be defeated by our pride. We may build magnificent machines, map the radar frequencies, and arrogantly toast to our own brilliance in the safety of our control rooms. But when the drag ropes of reality snap, when the compasses spin wildly out of control, and when the fuel gauge hits zero in the open sky, we are instantly violently reminded of our true fragile place in the natural order. The ocean does not care about our ambitions, our military might, or our complex flight paths. It will patiently wait for us to exhaust our engines, to burn our fuel, and to panic in the fog, and then it will quietly, effortlessly cover our failures with dark, freezing water. Where did those 27 doomed souls actually fly to in the blinding heart of that otherworldly fog? Did they slowly plunge into the freezing trenches? Or did they cross an invisible threshold into a space where time, direction, and physics hold no meaning? What ancient silent force reached up from the black abyssal depths of the Atlantic to claim them? The broken compasses, the empty radar screens, and the missing planes serve as a dark, terrifying warning left in the mist. The Earth is not ours to conquer. It is a terrifying, indifferent host, and we are merely its fragile, temporary guests. If we approach the void with arrogance, the void will simply swallow our arrogance into eternal silence. The elegant pilots who sought to dominate nature from above were finally, permanently absorbed by it. They vanished into the blank spaces of the map, becoming ghostly legends whispered by terrified sailors in the dark. We arrogantly believe that history is a series of dead events, completely locked away in the past, confined to the dry pages of our textbooks. But history is not dead. It is never dead. It merely slumbers beneath the shifting, groaning waves and the endless green fogs of our forgotten past, waiting to be remembered. We will meet again in the next era. You are watching past Resurrected. Until the next era.